Hey there, educator. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Lanisha, and I'm all about helping educators make meaningful connections in math instruction. If you've ever attended one of my live professional development sessions, then you know how truly passionate I am about this teacher life. PD for the Soul is my space for providing professional development on the go, where you can take what you need and place the rest on the shelf for another day. New episodes drop every Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is where we will dive into strategies, routines, and insights to help students build deeper understanding. And here's something new. Our monthly newsletter launches on March 1st. This will be your go-to spot for links to all resources we discuss on the podcast. I want you to have everything in one place. Plus, I'll share the books that will shape upcoming solo episodes in case you want to read along. But that's not all. The newsletter will also explore connections across domains and grade levels, because when we keep those connections at the core of our instruction, we give students the tools to make generalizations that make new concepts more accessible. So, hit subscribe, stay connected, and let's make math happen. See you in the episode. Welcome to today's episode, Reading Between the Numbers, How Literacy Powers Math Success. We often think of math and literacy as separate subjects, one focused on numbers, the other on words. But the reality is, math is a language of its own, and if students struggle with reading and comprehension, they'll struggle with math too. Whether it's understanding word problems, interpreting graphs, or making sense of mathematical reasoning, literacy plays a crucial role in unlocking deeper math understanding. So in this episode, we're diving into the powerful connection between math and literacy, how building strong reading and comprehension skills can help students become better problem solvers, critical thinkers, and confident mathematicians. We are joined by the incomparable Latoya King, an English and language arts curriculum specialist. Welcome, Latoya. Give us a bit about your background.
This is year 25 for me in education. I've taught everything from 6th grade to 12th grade English. I have served as a reading coach, an instructional coach, an AP teacher, you name it. This is year 25. This is something that I love.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. I respect everything that you bring to the table. You always talk with such wisdom, and I love hearing you talk whenever we come together in coaches academies and any type of meetings that we have. So I'm excited to get into this conversation. So you ready to jump in?
I am ready to jump in.
All right. So I want to think foundationally for a minute. So how does literacy impact a student's ability to succeed in math from your perspective?
Every problem is a reading problem first. So if students don't have reading strengths, they're not going to have strengths in other subjects. So the more that we look at this thing that we do as all of the pieces must work together, the better the outcomes for our students. So every problem is a reading problem first. The more success students have in reading, it will translate into math. Even for the kids who say, I don't like math or I don't like reading, I'm stronger in this. Everyone has a strength that we play to, but every problem is a reading problem first. So the more students we get to read and love reading, the better they'll be at math and other subjects.
Okay, so that brings me to what reading and comprehension skills do you feel like are essential for understanding complex math concepts?
Comprehension looks at verbal reasoning, inferencing. So those are the skills that are essential. Students need to be able to deconstruct word problems and being able to make sure that they are properly decoding and deconstructing the words in context. So the stronger they are in looking at problems and breaking them down in analysis, the better they'll be in math. They have to have the language to put with the computation.
That's so interesting because I just did an episode about how words matter. And I was talking with teachers today about how we have to be consistent with the language that we're using. It may seem small, it may seem insignificant, but we create hurdles by not being consistent in our language. So, what ways do students struggle with literacy in math classrooms, and how can we address those gaps so that we can kind of maximize that student success?
I believe students are struggling with literacy in math in the same ways they are finding it challenging in other content areas, including English. We are finding ourselves stealing from math teachers. I listened and loved the episode that you did on Words Matter, because I don't think in education that we are really upholding that. I think that teachers have begun to think that they have to talk a certain way to reach students instead of realizing that we are still professionals and this is still a classroom and we have to elevate our language and bring our students to that. There's still a place for us to celebrate and recognize and incorporate the language that our students use, but we have to be very intentional in making sure they understand the language of the classroom. I always think about, when I listened to your episode, I thought about the fact that a lot of students I taught seniors, and I told them to fold a paper in half, and they said, hot dog or hamburger? Excuse me? Hot dog or hamburger? I had no idea what they were talking about. And I said, do you mean horizontally or vertically? Why are we changing that for seniors in high school? There's a time and place. If I were talking about something we were going to eat at a cookout, hot dog, hamburger, appropriate. In a classroom where I'm trying to get them to appreciate language, I need to use all of the words that I can, and I need to make sure that they're hearing them in different contexts. So if I ask them to analyze in math, they're not thinking that's a skill I only use in reading. The more that we're optimizing our language and maximizing opportunities to show students that this is relevant, not just in my classroom, but it's a skill that it translates to another classroom. Again, the better the gains and the opportunities for students to have success.
Absolutely. So you said something about we feel like we have to talk a certain way. And I 1,000% agree with you. Sometimes I think that is a result of us having limiting beliefs about our students, feeling like they can't do that. They can't handle that. So we're changing up words. And sometimes when people are finding these substitution words, they don't always 100% translate. And then other people are not using those same substitution words. And so it creates confusion unnecessarily. And I laughed when you said the hot dog hamburger because I'm hearing that so much in middle school. And I'm like, what are we talking about? Hot dog, hamburger, or hamburger, hot dog, something like that they're doing that I feel like is completely unnecessary. And I feel like we water things down so much because our expectations are so low. And I hate that for us.
I hate that for us, and I hate that for our students.
Yes.
There's a quote that deals with vocabulary, and it says, the limits of my language are the limits of my world. So if we're trying to, I think teachers think we're including everyone, but we're limiting our students. We have to build our students' capacity, and we are the resource, not the book, not the text, whatever. We are the best resource. So in our district, we have a lot of international teachers. Every student who has been in a classroom of an international teacher should feel like they have just had open access to that country. And so instead of us thinking that we have to just teach our teachers who are visiting faculty how to conform and to be inundated with our culture, we need to celebrate the things that they're bringing from their culture. We must stop limiting our children by thinking that, no, they can't do it. And if they can't do it, if we think that they can't do it, okay, so what am I providing in my instruction that is going to give them access instead of, I got to bring this down? No, how do I bring them up? But how do I give them access? I am the bridge.
King, you preaching already. You're preaching already. Okay, so all right. So I want to talk now about how can we kind of create some bridges between math and reading classrooms. Whenever I started teaching, I was a ninth grade teacher teaching foundations of math and math one and then honors math one. And one of the things that was super important in our district was cross-curricular activities. So working alongside other content teachers and figuring out how can we leverage whatever you're offering in your classroom. Now, I won't say that we mastered it by any means, but I will say that I was surprised whenever I came to my current county that there wasn't as much of that cross-content collaboration happening. So that was kind of surprising for me because I feel like my current county is so much further ahead in so many other areas. So what are your thoughts about that? What are some effective strategies for math and reading teachers to collaborate?
I mentioned before that I'm stealing the math language routines. I tell English teachers when we do PLC, I just say that we're reclaiming strategies from math. But the 3 reads, I think, is a phenomenal way to do that because we are now champion students reading text multiple times. So if we're encouraging them to read multiple times, that first read, what is the situation? What's going on? You're just reading to make sure that you've comprehended the words within the text. The second time, we're having students to read for a specific standard. So how did figurative language impact this text? How do you see it impacting whatever we've read? And the third time, we're saying, how did that use of figurative language help us arrive at meaning? So again, still the same strategy. So if I'm using the same strategy that a student has used in math class with success, and now I'm bringing it into English, I'm giving them something that they're already familiar with. So regardless of their reservations that they might have in English class, how much power, and I hate to say I'm giving them power, but how am I sparking their interest by saying, oh, I already know this. So I've gotten them to put their guard down just a little bit to see, okay, maybe I could listen to a little bit more of what she's saying because she's using a strategy with which I'm already familiar. And it works in the opposite way as well. So again, if I've used it in English and now it's in math, it's familiar. That's one less hurdle I have to jump over in order to be successful in the content.
When I think about some of the challenges that we have with classroom management, with getting students talking with one another, with just getting them engaged in the content, I am reminded of how powerful it would be if we were all doing similar routines. Because like you said, I am familiar with this. So this is not something that this teacher is having to necessarily teach me. I have this experience from this classroom that I'm now translating over into this new classroom. Like I'm using those same skills or applying it here as well. So now I'm feeling like, oh, okay, I know what's going on. And I think for a lot of students, something that small and me just being familiar with the routine is game changing because now I have a reason to listen because I'm familiar with what we're about to do.
Yes. Now the language I'm using with teachers this year is how are we inviting students into the conversation? If it's something familiar, something I already know, I'm now invited into the conversation. It's not a thing that's just for you. It's not, oh, this is just a routine that just to use in math, just for the teacher to use. This is something I'm being invited to use something I already know within a new context. I wonder if some of this comes from high school teachers. When I taught high school, and we have this way of just shutting our door. And I am very much guilty of being the teacher who said, this is my classroom. What happens in here is different from what's happening out there. I'm limiting my students already. Even if I'm trying to say this, that I'm going to do things differently, even if I think that's working for them, why wouldn't I pull in the next teacher next to me to have them have the same type of approach? We have to stop thinking that this is my classroom, my subject. We have to open the doors. And so when we open the doors, that's when we're going to see that, hey, this skill that I'm teaching in English is useful in biology. This math concept is useful in art. We have to open the doors to make students see, how is this applicable? How do I apply it? Like, our students have access to a wealth of information because they have cell phones. They have computers with them all the time. And we still can't get them hooked on all of our content. So it has to be a different way that we're going about trying to spark their interest enough where I'm ready to apply this information that you're giving me.
And I think hearing some similar that academic language in different classes, I think that that would help. You know, we're always complaining about student attention spans or their memory and things like that. But if I'm hearing this over and over again, folded vertically, folded horizontally, if I'm hearing these 3 reads the first time that we're doing, this is what we're looking for. If I'm hearing that over and over again, now I am positively impacting that working memory. And they're not having to depend so much on just being trained over and over again because they're constantly in training. Like I'm hearing it in this classroom, I'm hearing it all day long. So at some point in the school year, if we're all being consistent with this, at some point in the school year, we're going to be running like a well-oiled machine, as they say.
And it has to be that consistency. It must be that consistency. And you mentioned training, like just as we have to be trained to do what we do, students have to be trained on what are the expectations in the classroom. And it can't just be a thing of doing it in isolation. Like, I think that we've tried doing things in isolation and it hasn't worked. So classrooms can't exist in silos. Teachers can't exist in silos. That is why collaboration is so important to what we do. So we have to be able to keep the conversations going and open the doors and talk cross-curricularly and make sure that students are exposed to, like, how long do you need to be trained on writing in a complete sentence? If that's my expectation, and if I'm saying, hey, in high school, everyone should be able to do it. It shouldn't be just the job of the English teacher to train students on how, and then I wouldn't have to teach that all over if we're all realizing that all of our content is built on the foundation of words, because everything that a student has to do involves reading. Writing involves reading. So the more that we're building our students to read and championing that we read, because I've worked in schools where the art teacher is the person who sparked an entire school's culture of reading. The art teacher, not the English teacher. So our students have to see us outside of just, she just teaches math, so I can't talk about words with her. No, words are every word. And words matter. So we have to talk about words in every class. That'll improve the vocabulary instruction. That'll improve the comprehension, because the more exposure we're giving students in the classroom, because it's not that our students aren't reading or writing because they are on the phone 24/7. They are reading and writing abbreviated language. So we have to expose them to traditional language and an appreciation for it.
Wow. So that just made me think about so many things. And this is going to sound real cheesy, but we are stronger together. We have to realize that as a school, we are stronger together. So we probably don't need to just have math POC meetings and ELA POC meetings. We got to come together and figure out what common language do we need to be using, what common routines can we be using to impact the entire hallway that's going to spill over into the entire school. Okay. So now thinking about literacy strategies, I'm always wanting students to annotate, to write, because I feel like that just extra layer of processing just helps with retention. So when we think about literacy strategies such as annotations and summarizing, how can that be incorporated in math instruction?
I think you're already doing it in math instruction. Having them read for keywords, having them rewrite, what is this problem really asking me to do? Marking through the things that are not needed, being able to extract the meat or the heart of the sentence or the heart of the question, and even writing out their questions. I think with annotation, we have gotten very heavily in the English classroom to just highlighting. Annotation is a conversation. It's a conversation with the text. So I want my students to write the things that they don't understand or they find puzzling or confusing, so that way I can catch that thought process. And now they can solve the problem, because I can say, oh, this is right here. This is where you lost me, or this is where it became challenging for you. So I have to be able to trace that thought process so that I can catch it, so that I can give them another strategy to add to their tool belt to be able to finish out the problem correctly.
As you are talking, I am looking at John Hattie's Visible Learning, those 250 plus influences on student achievement, because I like to reference him. If it's working, if the research suggests that this is impactful, then I want to mention it. So the first thing that you talked about is us kind of limiting the annotation to the highlighting. So when I look at underlining and highlighting, it does have 5/10, which is higher than the 4/10 that we want to reach. So it does have some positives there. When we look at summarizing, so now we're having a conversation, kind of like what you mentioned. So I'm reading the text, I'm reading maybe the task statement for math, and I am thinking about what it is that is being asked of me. Summarizing is 7,900. So that is almost double what we would want to see, with that hinge point being at 4/10. Summarization is almost double.
And it's a different mind mapping. It's a different processing of information for me to be able to take it in, realize or analyze what are the essential and critical pieces, take those out, and be able to math language routine, revoice what I have to do.
This is bringing up so much for me, and I'm trying to sit still because it's bubbling over. I really have to take some notes because it's bringing up so many things. I'm going to try to stay focused. How can math teachers support vocabulary development without sacrificing instructional time. You know, a lot of times, and I think I've even heard this sometimes in ELA classrooms as well, where they say we're not spending a lot of time on vocabulary, or we're doing it in conjunction or in alignment with specific text. So how can we support vocabulary development without teachers feeling like they're sacrificing that instructional time?
We definitely don't want teachers to feel like they're sacrificing the instructional time. And we also don't want teachers to feel like we don't want them to do vocabulary. What we're trying to do is to get teachers to turn back to the text. So allow the text and the standards to impact or influence your vocabulary instruction. So I think that math teachers can continue to be the bridge. So think about, we mentioned the words that are universal, like analyze, evaluate, simplify. Those are skill sets that you can use in any classroom. But when we're using math specific language, if we're talking about something being congruent, flat out have that conversation. Hey, what would be congruent in English? Or what are things that we see that are congruent in biology? So just have conversation, and it doesn't have to be old school, and I'm dating myself. Okay, class, take out your books, turn to this page. We're going to the highlighted or bold-faced words in the chapter, turn to the glossary, write down the Our students don't learn like that. But when they can see that it's natural and applicable in different contexts, that's how we stop limiting their world and we open it up. It doesn't take a very long vocabulary routine. It's simple. I'm telling them, hey, what are other contexts where you see congruence? What are other contexts where we see segmentation? Again, just using the word and exposing them to, because that's the experience of the word. That's where the Velcro and making it stick comes, because I have different experiences with this word. If I only hear onomatopoeia in an English classroom, how is it sticking? How am I building something to which that's going to become part of my working memory? But if I'm giving multiple opportunities for them to see the word, that's why we say word walls. I think teachers forget that if you just put the words up there and you don't ever reference them, it's not sticking. We have to make it where it's a natural part of their conversation, keeping it where they see it, where they're using it. We have to use the words with them and then expect them to use them back to us. So when they say, I reduced my fraction, no, tell me again, what did you do? We're not reducing, we simplified it. Look at me using my math language skills.
And I'm over here dancing because I'm so tickled, because words matter. Words matter. And you just gave me an idea. So I'm wondering, when you talk about how can we use segmentation, so when we're talking about line segment in 8th grade or whatever grade level, how can we then take what we know we're going to discuss in this unit and share that information with other content areas, so that we are getting that repetition across the different classrooms? That would be an interesting idea. And I don't think that I've seen that thus far, where we're talking about, okay, guys, these are some of the concepts that we're talking about, where we're talking literally as a grade level or literally as a school in our meeting. These are the concepts that we're talking about, the vocabulary, the terminology that we're going to be using over the next couple of weeks. So how can we increase the number of times that students interact with these words? Do you have any text that's coming up that would allow us to use this vocabulary? What are your thoughts on that?
We have to get teachers to see PLC as not another meeting. We have to make PLC a culture or part of the culture of the school. So that's the place. And again, it works wonderfully in middle school because that's how middle school is designed. We're a team. So as a team, we should be trying to have something that is cross-curricular, where, okay, you're studying this concept, and in math, I can relate to this concept with this, and science with this. So middle school is kind of built in. In high school, we have to work a little harder to make that happen. So those conversations should be happening. And it can't just be a thing where we have to have an organized PLC to do it. But if you think about your teacher crew is normally not just your content area. So think about that math teacher that you're close with, that science teacher. Have conversations about their content area. And what text? Every classroom should have a class library, not just English classes. I am side-eyeing English classes that don't have classroom libraries, but every classroom, because there are books about mathematicians. There are books about mathematical concepts. There are short articles that we can pull in. And then from there, we can build on that with our science and our social studies. Again, we have to look at teaching the whole child, because the child is not just going to be in our classroom. I had a parent tell me once, Miss King, you're teaching my kid like she's going to major in English. In my hopes and dreams, every student is. But reality, I understand what the parent was saying to me now better than I did in that moment. Every child is not going to major in English, but I have to give them just enough so that when if they make the decision to do that, I've prepared them for that. But I also have to help prepare them for other areas as well. And so if I'm speaking more to my math teacher and saying, "Ooh, I have the student who loves math," I have to find out, how do I open the door to get them to love English as well? How do I invite them into the conversation? And it might be I have to step out of my comfort zone. Teachers, we have to stop thinking that we are the expert on everything. We're not. And being vulnerable with our students will help. Like, it'll help. Like, have a conversation where our students know a little bit more than we do. Because whichever teacher was the teacher who said, "I can't learn from my students," is not really a teacher, because as a teacher, I should be a lifelong learner. And if I know better, I gotta do better.
It's just so many things. It's so many things. It's so many things. Okay. It's so many things. Like, I can't even get my thoughts together right now. Okay. So when we think about fluency, what role does fluency play when we're talking about problem solving and mathematical reasoning?
We want students to be able to read. So if there are decoding issues that prevent them from reading and making meaning of the words, yes, we want to address those. But if we're thinking assessment, our students have how many hours to take a test? They don't have to read quickly, but I want them to be able to read and understand. I'm not looking for how quick they are. Yes, I don't want them to struggle with words to the point that it's going to impede understanding. And if they are, then I can go to my reading specialist or my reading interventionist to try to figure out, how do I bring them up to the level that they should be on. But from there, the fluency, just the more that we're exposing them to words and helping them to make meaning of words, that's going to assist them with the fluency piece. And math naturally helps students with their vocabulary. If I'm thinking of, if the prefixes, all of our math prefixes that we use in music, that we use in poetry, those are things that we have to celebrate. So the more that we're able to, again, open the doors and let students see the similarities and how one skill is helping them with the next, the better it will be. Like, just the more we expose them to language and give them opportunities to use language, and not just reading it, but writing and speaking it. I think sometimes we don't really emphasize that speaking piece. Speaking and listening is a standard in English. And the more students are practicing with the verbal piece, the sharper they can get in other areas. And honestly, our students are often able to articulate things verbally and not writing them down. So we have to be able to try to use one skill to sharpen the other.
Okay, so how can schools create a culture where, like you were mentioning earlier, literacy is emphasized across all content areas?
There are many different ways to go about it. I remember we used to have posters in schools, and not just English teachers. I worked at a local high school, and every teacher had a sign outside of their door asking, "Ask me what I'm reading." And they would have either a picture of the book or the title of the book that they're reading now. And it's just a way to spark conversation, but also for your students to see you outside of, "I'm just a blank teacher. I'm a person and I have interests outside of being a teacher." And sometimes we'll find connections that way. I worked in a district that did one city, one book, and I would love if my district would explore that, where there was one book that the entire city was reading. That's something you could do within a school, within a grade level. There are great discounted stores that offer books at a highly reduced rate so that you could do something like that in a district or in a school. So that way you're having conversation about books, even in a math class or any class. If I find a book that is about my content, last 5 minutes, what a way to get our kids to cool down after I've closed out the lesson, they've done their exit ticket. I can read to them for 5 minutes. And now as they're exiting, now they're talking about what they heard, content related. And one that I like to use in high school and middle school that we don't often think about, but picture books. Not every picture book was intended for small children. There is a book I love that I always plug. It's called I Am Every Good Thing by Derek Barnes. And that particular book was written as a poem to his son, who was 16, 17 years old. They just found beautiful pictures. So there are lots of different picture books that are on math, that are on science, social studies concepts. But again, getting students to put visuals and then talk about it and talk about the incorporation of the different content areas into something that we think of as simple because it's a picture book.
Okay, so ask me what I'm reading. I think that that would be a really cool way to build relationships with students because you never know. You never know. Some people might be interested in something that a student may be interested in. I like to read a lot of young adult or like teen like things as well because I feel like it gives me an eye into the students that I'm supporting that could be made up, but it feels like it does. So you never know, I may come across the book that my students might be interested in as well. And now we have a way to connect. We have something to talk about that is outside of mathematics, which is going to help me in mathematics because now I'm creating allies. I'm creating my little clique. So that Ask Me What I'm Reading, I think is super cool because again, it shows that we all are doing something other than just teaching math for me or teaching science or creating art. I'm also reading. Let's have a conversation about what it is that I'm reading. One city, one book. So if we did something like this, would it be like a book study where we're reading it and now we're having a conversation about it as a district or school?
It would be reading and having a conversation. So you could use that as in middle school when you have your, I'm going to say intervention time or advisee time. It gives you some time to still, because there are skills that we're using in reading that we still need in everyone's class. So we could still do some analytical things, but it doesn't seem as though it's directly attached to a standard. I can read and do a 1-sentence summary of what I just heard or what I just read with my class. And again, I'm sharpening skills that I'll still use in different classes, but it's less invasive than let's read pages 10 to 28 and answer 5 questions, because everything doesn't have to be attached to an assignment. And we get mad when students ask, are you going to grade this? But we've created that. When do we get them to read just for fun, for enjoyment, to bring your heart rate down? When do we do those things? So now they see it as a chore because that's what we've done. We've made it a chore. It's the list you have to check out. Did you do your reading log? I need you to have X number of hours. When do we let students choose what they want to read? So if I see it in someone else's class, if someone else has a class library, I'm not looking at it just through an English class lens. I'm looking at it as something that is fun, interesting, cool. I have a teacher who I really respect, and my teacher's reading this. I might just want to check it out just because that teacher is. And as you mentioned, that's the relationship builder. If I can start having conversations with them about the book, they'll be a little bit more at ease when it's something that they find super challenging. When we say meet them where they are, that's what it is. If they're on the football field, I got to meet them at the football field. If they're on the basketball court, I have to show them that it goes back to the cliche. Do you know enough about me to teach me? So if I want you to buy into what I'm selling, this product, this English class, this math class, if I want your attention, then I need to show that I care about you as a person. You are who I'm teaching. I'm not really teaching English. I'm teaching you. So I have to figure out what is it that I need to do to get you to buy in to performing a way that's going to make you successful, not just in my class, but down the road.
You're giving me all the ideas. So I just pictured, imagine if we had students to find a book, a pleasure book that you're going to read. And you know how we do, sometimes we do SEL at the beginning of class, or we do SEL on Wednesday, or whatever the case may be, social and emotional learning. So imagine if we said at this time, we're going to share something about or something from the book that we're reading. So it could be the one sentence summary that you just mentioned, or whatever the case may be. But we're getting students to talk about something that they find interesting, that they find important. So now we are taking the edge, that we're taking the coldness off the classroom. We're getting everybody relaxed because you're talking about something that you genuinely enjoy. So now I get ready to transition to this math, and I done got you loosened up, you ready. You sit beside somebody where y'all had a good conversation about the book that you just read. You had shared something, they added on. We've built a community all centered around reading something that I enjoy.
And I love that you said community. When I think about my journey in education, I came to education thinking it takes a village. And as an educator, I wanted to be part of that village. I also think about another proverb, and it is the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down. We have to think about, what are we doing for our children? Are we embracing them? Are we embracing them through the things that we're saying to them? Through the inclusion of, I'm working with this teacher to make you successful, that I'm not just compartmentalizing and this is my class and this is my room. If I'm not opening the doors and doing whatever we have to do as a village to work together as a school system, as a school, to make sure these kids are successful, they're going to burn it down to feel its warmth. And we don't want that. We have to know that as educators, we are not teaching for a test. I'm not teaching for graduation. I am teaching because teaching and education is opportunity. I am teaching to save your life and to continue this life cycle.
I used to have this saying where I'm teaching like my life depends on it. Well, really, it's their life that depends on it, because we've kind of already been there. We've already kind of, I've graduated high school, I've graduated college, I'm in my career. I am trying to set you up to be prepared to make the decisions for you to have a fruitful life. That is so interesting. So I want teachers who are listening right now, I want you to reflect on, if you have any students in your classroom who are trying to burn down your village, and I want you to think about how did you influence that? What space did you create that would warrant that from them, that behavior from them? Why would they want to burn down the village? Is it because they don't feel included? Is it because they don't feel like you value their presence in your classroom? So I want y'all to just think about that. I ain't need to get this deep, but Ms. King is taking us deep. So I want you to take some time and reflect on what is happening in your class. Is your village thriving, or is your village burning? So how I want us to kind of bring our conversations somewhat to a close is, I want to think about school leaders. So if we have school leaders who are listening to this episode, how can they support interdisciplinary collaboration that we know is going to improve student outcomes in both literacy and math, and then pretty much all the other content areas as well?
They have to make it a priority. You just have to make it a priority. You have to think about what are your students' interests, and how can you meet them where they are? Is it by having authors who are writing about something that is of interest to them? Is it by having stories that have characters who speak the language that they speak or look like them? And really the answer to that is, it's all of the things. So you have to value your students enough to make that a priority, where I am going to open the doors so that my math teacher, my social studies teacher, my Spanish teacher, every teacher in the building is working collectively to find, and I don't want to just say a unit, because it has to become part of our practice. Like, we're teaching students something that is relevant to them. And so we have to, as leaders have to give time for that. It's one thing for you to say that, I want you to do this interdisciplinary unit, but if I'm not giving you time to plan it and to have that conversation so that you're talking about who's in your classroom and how you're going to invite your students into the conversation. If I don't give you time to do it, I can say I want it done, but if I don't give you the time to do it, I'm not really about that business. And so leaders have to be about that business and see, like, and again, in middle school, I know it's very easy, but I had a wonderful principal that I worked for, and she used to make us get out of our comfort zones. Think about in faculty meetings, you have your spot where you sit like all the time. She would make us get up from our spot. Stop sitting with your department. You got to sit with somebody else. Some of it is our students aren't doing interdisciplinary things because it's not convenient for the adults. The adults don't want to talk to each other. We have to get out of our comfort zones. We have to challenge ourselves. So stop sitting with just the English peeps. Go sit with your science peeps and have those conversations so that you can go ahead and start planning. So again, just that small thing at the beginning of a faculty meeting, if the school leader says, I want you to sit with somebody you don't normally sit with and see how you are, what's the commonality in your content right now or coming up. That's us opening the door to that interdisciplinary study.
And that's so achievable. Like that's something we could literally do in the next faculty meeting. A question so simple. Where are the commonalities in what you guys are working on right now? Yeah. I think sometimes we make things a lot bigger and a lot harder to accomplish than what they actually are. Like we really can do a lot by just starting with a little.
One bite at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So again, just a conversation, because that's what we want to do for our kids. That's why we have a bell ringer. Yes, to settle them down. Yes, so that we can be someplace else. But it's starting their thinking. I'm trying to hook you. I'm trying to get you excited before I come with my actual presentation of lesson. So if I can find the ways that you're similar, I'm hooking y'all first. And then we can start talking about a whole interdisciplinary unit. But just what are y'all doing right now that we can bridge the gap because you're doing this and I'm doing that. And it's really the same thing. I probably, when I reflect on myself as a student, Jose Cruz was my 9th grade Spanish teacher. And I didn't just learn Spanish. We did math. He talked about history. He brought in music, the arts, dancing, all of those things. And I loved the class because he taught me everything. He didn't just teach me Spanish.
One of my main goals with PD for the Soul is for us to create space where teachers can come in here and they can consume these episodes and it contributes to them building capacity. I want them to be able to do more, not in a way that feels overwhelming, but in a way that feels accessible. And I think our conversation tonight definitely highlighted some things that we could be doing in our classrooms and our buildings, on our hallways, that is accessible. We've unpacked a lot today about how literacy strengthens math success, from decoding word problems to making sense of mathematical reasoning. The key takeaway here, if we want students to thrive in math, we have to be intentional about how we build their literacy skills right alongside their numeracy skills. As you head back to your classrooms, I challenge you all to take a closer look at the reading demands in your math lessons. Are students grappling with the language just as much as the numbers? What small shifts can you make to support their comprehension and their confidence? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Reading Between the Numbers, How Literacy Powers Math Success. If this episode resonated with you, I want you to share it with a fellow educator, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, Ms. Latoya, I really appreciate you for being here, and everybody else, I want you guys to keep making math happen. P.S. I've got a reflection journal coming your way soon, and it's designed to help you turn these ideas that you've been hearing about on each episode into action. It's free and it's powerful. More details coming soon. And if today's episode sparks something for you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a colleague, someone who's ready to make math happen. I want us to grow together, so I'll see you and your colleague next week.